Today on Let It Rip Weekend, President Trump calling for teachers to be armed after that Florida school shooting.
The teacher would have shot the hell out of him before he knew what happened.
But would that really make students feel safer? We're talking to our future leaders, high school students sharing their views on gun control, assault weapons, and whether or not they feel safe at school. Let It Rip Weekend starts right now. It's time now to Let It Rip. I'm Marielle Liu.
And I'm Charlie Langton. All right, with us today, first, let's take a look. Brooke Solomon, she's from Detroit's Cass Tech High School. She says the time has come for tougher gun laws. But then Nathan Buchanan, a senior at South Lyon High School, says tougher gun laws violate the Second Amendment. And then there's Devin Makala. He is from Flint Powers High School, who says the only way to be safe is to get rid of all those assault rifles. And finally, Autumn Boucher from Madison Heights School, who says it's time to think about giving guns to teachers. Let me start with each of you. Just a little background, a little bit. How safe do you feel in your school in light of what happened in Florida? Brooke, let's start with you.
In light of what happened in Florida, I never felt safe in my school. Just generally being a student, we're always on edge because you never know what could happen, and still I don't feel safe.
And you're a senior at Cass Tech?
I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore. Sophomore at Cass Tech, and you have
yes.
armed guards and metal detectors.
We have metal detectors, we have security guards, we have local police in our school almost constantly, and yet I still don't feel safe.
Nathan in South Lyon, what about you? Are you safe in your school? You have nothing.
I do feel safe in my school despite the lack of protection, but I've never really felt that my safety was threatened in my school. We live in a fairly safe area.
What about you?
I feel very safe in my school. I think we have a really nice community and a culture that fosters solidarity. So I don't think I have to worry about any one of my students turning against us because we have such a close-knit relationship. But I do feel for those kids who don't share in the same blessing that I have.
And you also, Flint, do not have armed guards or secure or metal detectors in your school?
We don't have armed guards, but we do have guards.
Okay, no metal detectors?
No metal detectors.
Autumn?
I feel safe in my school only because it's such a small class. I have 80 in my graduating class, and it's a school full of 360 students. So we never felt like we needed that kind of security, but now since everything's been happening, I feel a lack of safety. I just feel on edge about everything lately.
Yeah.
Brooke, you said that you don't feel safe at your school despite having armed guards and metal detectors. Would you feel safer if your teachers also had guns?
No, I would not.
Why?
I would actually feel less safe because many of our teachers aren't qualified to carry guns, and many of our teachers don't want to, so why would you try to put them in that position? And in my school, Cass Tech and DPS, we don't even have the resources that we need. We don't even have like textbooks for every student. So how are we going to associate, or how are we going to put guns into the hands of our teachers if we don't already have like basic things for schooling?
Who disagrees? Who thinks that teachers should carry guns? Anyone?
Nathan does.
I don't really disagree, but I don't really agree either.
Well, what are your thoughts?
It kind of depends on, I suppose, what the public thinks, the people who are involved with the school. I don't think that all teachers should be allowed to carry guns because, as we've discussed, not all of them are properly trained, not all of them want to, and not all of them believe in it. So I think it should be kind of on a basis of, do we think that it's necessary?
Local school control, then, is that right?
Exactly.
Would you like to see teachers carry guns in your school?
Absolutely not. I think that giving a gun to an untrained individual is the same as giving a gun to a child. It's irresponsible. And even if the individual is trained, by having the gun in the environment, it's another opportunity for someone who is deranged, who is at the school already, to have access to a firearm.
Some people would say, though, that having just the fact that we've seen so many school shootings and these gun-free zones, in fact, we've got a graphic here, a lot of people are using these assault-type weapons and deaths are happening in schools. And some would argue that the casualties occurred in these gun-free zones. And we can go down the line. Parkland, we just had 17 deaths. Now, admittedly, they're not all schools. But look at some of these are schools, though. some people would say that if a student, or not a student, but a teacher or a principal had a gun, who was trained to use the gun, that would, number one, be a deterrent to a crime, a shooter, and number two, it might have prevented some of these deaths. Do you agree with that?
I disagree and agree with this topic only because when we give a teacher a gun, we're giving them the responsibility of possibly pulling the trigger. A teacher didn't sign up for that. This isn't something that they came into saying, oh, I feel like I have to carry a gun, I might have to pull the trigger. That can affect somebody emotionally and physically. Like, nobody's prepared and nobody knows what they would do in that situation. You can hand a teacher a gun, but who's to say that they would pull the trigger? Who's to say anybody who would know what to do in that situation? I don't even know what I would do in a situation like that. So my mind wouldn't be mentally prepared. I don't think anyone's would really be, so.
Devin, I want to hear from you. There is a national push for teachers to get the training. I do think in this conversation that's the important part to mention is that at least in talks of whatever this policy could look like, the idea is not just to give teachers guns, but they would give them what they say is the proper training so that they're ready to use it if they need.
Yeah, so the NYPD, when being fired at, have a less than 20% rate of hitting their target. So let's say you give an American Lit teacher a couple months of training. Do you really think they'll be able to best America's finest? Absolutely not. It'll just increase the problem. I mean, I would never trust, or even as a teacher, is it a teacher's responsibility to be the defense for the student, or is it the teacher's responsibility to teach? So,
but Nathan, it would be optional, though. A teacher that didn't want to have a gun certainly would not be forced to have a gun. I don't think anybody's really saying that. But those who are trained, who do feel safe with a gun, who have the proper vetting process, wouldn't it maybe make students, and maybe even in Cass Tech, safer, Nathan?
I think that in some cases it would, but it also goes down to, would the students feel safer? Would people feel safer? We would definitely have to ease into it before people would feel comfortable with this. My teacher in first hour for shop class, she actually has a concealed carry license. She's been trained for many years, but of course she can't carry in the school. But like I said, I don't think everywhere it would be necessary. I think that
some say it could be a distraction to kids. How do you feel your ability to learn would be impacted by looking at your teacher who's trying to teach and you're focusing on the gun on his or her hip?
Right. I'm at school to learn. I'm at school to get a better education. I'm not there to look at a gun or to even think about a gun. When I'm at school, I should not be thinking about a firearm at all. I should be focused on my lesson. And that is definitely distracting, and that would definitely distract someone who's in school to learn.
Let me change topics just a little bit. Nicholas Cruz, he is the person accused of shooting in Florida. A recent student in that school who was kicked out. His social media posts had all kinds of very disturbing things about guns and killing, etc. Do you guys know in your school, can you tell maybe if there's someone like that? And I'm not suggesting that there is by any means, but can you police yourselves in the school? Anybody? Brooke?
I think that as students, we know each other fairly well, so I think we might be able to, but you still never know. You don't want to judge someone completely and then ostracize them. So it's all situational. You don't know until you know, which is really unfortunate.
I agree that with Brooke, there is a very big gray area there as far as, because you have to kind of guess for yourself, and sometimes it's not always true. Sometimes that could lead to more problems in a way.
Yeah.
I also feel like our generations challenge us to think this way. So there could be many pros to it. It's a source of protection. I mean, it's our society's problem. It's the people in our society who's challenged us to make us think that way, who question us. I mean, I thought about it too. I'm like, will a gun make me feel safer? It might make me feel safer, but I feel like there's other precautions we can take, more security at schools. I don't know if each teacher would feel comfortable with a gun, but I just feel like it's a security.
I want to make Brooke feel safe at her school, though, after today's conversation, though. What can be done, though? So what up? But can you identify those people, though, that might be subject? I know that, Nathan, we talked earlier, and the person that had a threat against South Lyon High School, you kind of said that there might have been some indications maybe that he would be the one making the threat. Can you guys tell, Deb?
Well, I mean, at least among my school, like I said before, we're very close. We have a nice relationship. So I don't think that anybody in my community would be able to, we would catch them before they fell down the slope. And I think that's what a lot of communities need, is some kind of mutual understanding that, some solidarity between each member of the community so that no one ever has to feel ostracized or marginalized or disenfranchised.
You guys got to be worried if someone gets expelled from school. That, oh no, we have to be careful about that. I want to hold that thought for a moment. I want to come back here. I want a time for reasonable gun control. What does that mean? Don't forget, share your thoughts with us using the hashtag Let It Rip on Facebook and Twitter. You may very well see your comments at the end of the show.
So after the break, should civilians be able to own military-style weapons? We'll check in with these students and see what they think. Plus, you'll be tweeting as well. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Let It Rip Weekend. We are talking to a panel of high school students about gun control.
The AR-15 has been used in many recent mass shootings. So should the weapon be banned? We are back right now with Brooke, Nathan, Devin, and Autumn. Thank you for staying with us. There's a lot of talk right now about some actual change happening. This is the first time it has at least felt to the general public that there would be some movement, and it's because of kids your age. Why do you think that your voice is being heard so loudly?
I think that our voice is being heard so loudly because we're making our voices be heard. We are organizing, we're planning walkouts, we are advocating for our causes, and we are the ones that are pretty much majority being affected by this. There's school shootings with kids our age, and we're sick of it and we're fed up and we want change.
So in the midst of the Parkland shooting, there was something different, because this time the kids rallied together and understood that they're not going to let another Parkland happen. They're going to organize, and they're going to actually promote change by politicizing, by calling upon legislators, by having town halls, by organizing walkouts. They've unified, and now they're fighting for change.
Should the AR-15, the weapon that was used in Florida, be banned?
Yes, that is a military-grade weapon. No one needs a military-grade weapon for self-defense. There are multiple other alternatives. It makes every environment a hostile environment when you have these 90 round per minute weapons being used with high capacity magazines.
Nathan? Ban them? Get rid of them. You can't have them.
I don't think so.
Why not?
Well, because it's not really a military grade weapon. They do use it, but it's been used in the United States. It's been allowed to be carried by civilians for a long time. Like down in Texas, you see a lot of people there who actually carry their guns around their backs while they go like grocery shopping. I can see how someone would definitely be off-put when they saw that, but it also, for them especially, does create an environment of safety having that with them in case they do need it.
But what makes it not a military-grade weapon?
It's a semi-automatic. The military uses automatic rifles when they're out on missions.
Yeah, well, I mean, the AR-15 is a military-grade weapon used in the military. And I think that, especially with bump stocks, it turns a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle.
Some people say, though, the AR-15, if I've got one, it's a deterrent. No one's going to come after me. And some people might argue the Second Amendment has a right to have that weapon, whether we like it or not.
So the Second Amendment, it was reinterpreted in 2008, Heller versus the District of Columbia. And so the language within that court case says that the AR-15 could be identified, not specifically the AR-15, but weapons that are dangerous or unusual can be banned by the government. That is the language of the case. And so, I mean, we see originally within the Second Amendment itself, it was originally so that people aged 16 to 60 had access to a musket for serving in militias. It was because the nation was it was just being founded and had the existential threat from other countries in the colonial era.
Times have changed. So the Supreme Court did uphold the right to ban the guns. Autumn, weigh in on this one, though. If we're talking about banning these assault-type weapons, and no one's saying automatic weapons, but these semi-automatic weapons, should they be banned?
There's disadvantages and advantages. I believe that for one, a bump stock is made for the equivalence of a machine gun. So I feel like we shouldn't totally ban a certain gun. We should put more regulations towards that gun and who receives that gun. I mean, a bump stock, I feel like not anybody should just have it because it's the equivalent of a machine gun. I feel like we should have more steps regulating who receives that.
Is there any use of a bump stock this day and age? I think even the president is saying get rid of bump
There's
stock.
no real need for one. Is there?
I think that bump stocks are definitely a huge problem, but I think that's kind of a smaller portion of the gun control argument. I really think that the main issue is kind of mandatory background checks, because the transactions between people are only recorded from the gun shop to the individual.
Brooke, you're a sophomore, but the other three, though, are you 18? Are you 18?
17.
17? 18?
18, yeah.
You're
17.
17. So you could legally buy a gun today.
I could,
Which-
but because of my psychiatric history, I would not be allowed.
All right, all right, all right. Should we up the age of people buying these type of weapons? That's another discussion being.
I think in many places it's 21. If that's, am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It could be.
I believe it's local and depending on the weapon. Like I think you can buy a shotgun at 18. I'm not sure.
Yeah, shotguns. That's right. I think conceptually, though, what is reasonable gun control? Brooke, what would you like to see? Reasonable gun control.
I think that we need to expand background checks to all gun sales, and that's just logic right there. Like, we just need background checks, because if you're not checking who is buying a gun, then what do you know? You don't know anything. We also need to implement red flags, where family members or significant others can red flag a person from buying a gun, and we need to start working our way up to banning semi-automatic weapons.
The NRA may not like what you're saying, Brooke. Is this just too political to really make a difference? The NRA is powerful. Devin?
I think the NRA is powerful, but our voices as students are much louder than the NRA. In Parkland, with the students who are speaking against the NRA, they are doing something that has not been done before. We've had 18 mass shootings this year. This one is different because we all understand that change needs to happen. And so the NRA can pump money into elections, but our voices will always be louder than theirs.
Yeah, and that 18 school shootings that was reported from Everytown, USA. You talked about this shooting being different, the voices being more powerful, and when it comes to the NRA, there are several businesses that are now cutting ties with the NRA, something that we have not seen happen, at least not on this magnitude. Delta Airlines, United Airlines, Avis, Hertz, Alamo, so many more, Best Western, Wyndham Worldwide, MetLife, First National Bank, and the list continues to grow. Do you see this as moving in the right direction, or is this a distraction from the real issue?
I honestly think it's kind of distracting from the issue at hand. Though it may seem like it's helping, I think just cutting ties with the NRA doesn't really do much because it's not really making an effect on what's really the problem, is that people are dying in senseless murders.
But it does show corporate responsibility. That's something that millennials and younger seem to care about.
Yeah, go ahead, Brooke.
I think that it's not trying to take away from a bigger picture, because the issue is gun control, and the NRA has a lot to do with that. So when these corporations are not accepting money from them, they're showing their stance and they're siding with us. And I think that that's really good, because we are trying to work toward a safer country and a safer future, and that's what we need.
Well, I'll say that there's been Democrats, Republicans battling over gun control, reasonable gun control for years, until students started speaking. Maybe now there's some changes. You guys may be the best advocates around, or whatever. All right.
Coming up, we'll share your thoughts live on the air. We'll be right back.
Now it is time for you to be part of the discussion.
All right, Nathan, first question will go to you. Speaking as a veteran, when you're carrying a weapon, you are at a heightened state of awareness at all times. How could someone teach like that? What do you think?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for your service. Absolutely, and I think that's a very excellent point that you bring up. And even like speaking as a student, I'm sure a lot of students would also be very kind of weirded out in that kind of environment. That's definitely something, if we ever got to the point where we'd be seriously thinking about implementing this idea, that would be definitely one of the main things to discuss.
Very good. Thank you.
This topic comes up quite a bit. Jordan says it's time to seriously start addressing mental health issues. Autumn, where does the discussion about mental health fit into this gun control issue?
Like I said, you can't mentally prepare somebody to hold a gun and possibly pull the trigger. I feel as though to receive a gun, you should have multiple background checks, multiple doctors. I feel like there's way more that goes into it.
Devin, I think this is an interesting point. This person tweeting today, we need to have similar protection as our politicians, movie stars, athletes, etc. Children are the future. Protect them.
Yeah, so I think that the reason that politicians, movie stars, and actors have that kind of protection is because they have a target on their head. Because there are influential people that people grow up watching and are, if you were to take up arms against that person, everyone would know. But children, it's different. Children are in their developmental period, and to be surrounded by a firearm has significant impacts to their psyche.
We only have time for one more. Let's try this one. Detroit 70-1. Weak teachers will have the gun taken away by a student bully. Nathan, is that a real possibility?
I mean, absolutely. One scenario is that students could gang up on the teacher and maybe disarm them. That's definitely something to consider.
All right. Brooke, as well, you want to weigh in real quick then? The last comment?
About teachers and guns?
Yeah.
Just speaking from a urban student, I go to Cass Tech DPS, and I don't think that teachers should be armed because they're not prepared, and we do not have enough money to arm teachers with guns. Who's paying for this?
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so
much. And that's it
much
for this edition of Let It Rip Weekend. Remember, head over to fox2detroit.com for all of the news of the day. Happy Sunday, folks.
Thank you.